Wildlife Federation's The Hide.
Welcome back, everyone. Mark Kakich, Taylor Finger, and special guest Eric Loebner here at the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation's annual conference. Here we have The Hide. This is our 5th episode that we're recording today, and it's awesome to have Eric Loebner, Bureau Director, with us. Eric, how long have you been with the department?
Yeah, I've been with the Wisconsin DNR since 1994. So I was one of those really fortunate people. When you look around the country, many people think that when you get into conservation, you generally have to move around the country really to be able to find a job and be able to to get employed, get the experience that you need. I was one of those lucky people that I was able to start working on a wildlife area near and dear to my heart, Mead Wildlife Area, close to my home. I mean, I literally grew up right on the south boundary of Mead Wildlife Area, if you can imagine it. Literally, I could see the property, Mead Wildlife Area, from our property. So, great place to be. Started out there in 1994. I was that guy that was out there filling rat holes in the dikes. Whether it was, springtime of the year, we'd be hitting those every day. We'd have to be checking to make sure that there wasn't any blowouts or that there wasn't any water bubbling out of the dike. So, fixing parking lots, painting signs, you name it.
I was probably in recess in first grade.
Yeah, that's not so
I
funny.
didn't even think you made it that far by then. But, yeah,
I so totally agree. It's not really that funny.
So our relationship started as you progressed through the career and ended up in Horicon, world famous Horicon Marsh, wetland of international importance.
Yeah, absolutely.
My favorite place.
Yep, it's near and dear to my heart as well. It was actually, so I went from Mead, I went to working in Horicon, started doing private lands management work, working with private landowners, doing wetland and grassland restoration work. So just a fantastic opportunity, 4 townships or 4 counties, just incredible area to be able to do conservation work, working with private landowners. Then I moved to an opportunity down in our central office down in Madison. I was the assistant upland specialist, working on turkeys, pheasants, prairie chickens, sharp-tailed grouse, you name it, from a statewide level. And then I got my first job as a full.
You were faking it up to that point.
Well, right, exactly, yeah.
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Then I got my first permanent job as a wildlife biologist working out of the Horicon office. And yeah, that's where the first time I think you and I crossed paths. Not sure if that was a good thing or not, but whatever.
You turned out okay. Huh?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Then I worked there for almost 9 years. I worked in Horicon. I really did a lot of great work, North American Wetland Conservation Act grants, working on those on a regular basis to bring in revenue, working with private landowners who wanted to do work on their property. And then I also purchased a lot of DNR land that's open to the public now, and did just a bunch of wetland restorations, grassland stuff. It was really a great opportunity, really learned a lot. And then I had an opportunity. There was a vacancy for one of our district supervisor positions in our southern district. And so just for folks that may be, checking in that may not know, we have 4 main districts in the Wisconsin DNR's wildlife program right now. And ultimately, I became the district supervisor for one of those. So I think it's 18 counties in the southern district. Ultimately then took on that role as the district supervisor and supervise all the staff there.
And now you sit, towards the top of the pedestal,
Yep.
Bureau Director of Wildlife at the Department of Natural Resources.
Yep, exactly right. Then I worked there in the Southern District as a district supervisor. It was about 7 years there, and now since 2017, I've been the Bureau Director for the Wildlife Management Program.
So before we really get started in conversation about some very specific topics, let's look back at your career. It's almost 30 years working for the department. You're coming up on that. What are some of the things that you see that really changed significantly in those 30 years?
Wow, that's a great question, Mark. When you think about it, as I look back, well, first of all, when I started, that was an era before we had cell phones. Right? It was a period of time when many people, hunting was generally out on grandma and grandpa's farm or out on your own property. land ownership has changed dramatically in that 30-year period. And as a result of that, what we've seen is just an increased demand and use for public land. You look at certain activities, waterfowl hunting in particular, our use rates for waterfowl hunting and where waterfowl hunters go to enjoy their sport is generally heavily driven by either public land or obviously those public water systems, whether it's the Lake Michigan or it's the Mississippi River, you name it, that's where people go. And that historically was not necessarily the way it used to be. I mean, people were definitely, I would say, more spread out. And so we've seen more of a push on public land. If you get into other aspects of hunting in particular, even certain hunting activity, it's become a lot more solo in nature, where you used to have big groups of people. I mean, when I grew up, we hunted with all of the neighbors in our neighborhood, right? For deer hunting in particular. We would drive 9 different sections of land.
When we went hunting in my neighborhood growing up, the police brought us.
Yeah, I believe it. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that was for me. I was lucky, right? I grew up out in the country. We just had incredible opportunities. We get together with neighbors. I came from a large family. There was a lot of farm families that were larger in size. And I'll tell you, we just had tremendous opportunities to get out and enjoy nature.
And you were talking about cell phones. I mean, what about communication? Like how that's changed, just how you communicate with hunters. I mean, even since I started, I've only been with the department for almost 10 years. And I can't even imagine the change that has, and just our ability as the DNR having to navigate that.
GPS. Right? Cell phone.
Trail cameras.
Snap a picture. Trail cameras, right? It's yeah, the whole...
Just how they contact us, whether it used to be just sending us letters. I know. And now you're getting emails, and you have to respond to that email within X amount of time because that's the expectation, versus, it used to take 3 days to get a letter sent out.
Our society as a whole is just a lot, faster paced, and they have more immediate expectations. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is, right? And so, you think about the things that as an agency, right? The agency has an app, that we ultimately work to provide information electronically to the customer. Well, in my day and age, when I started, first of all, like I said, you didn't have a cell phone. Well, now that is I think it's second nature to people. That's how they find land to hunt. That's how they scout land to hunt.
That's how we collect information as biologists.
Data collection, correct?
Data collection, right. And much of the work that we do, well, shoot, I can think when I started, not everybody had a computer, right? Now,
I'll give you mine.
I would too. I'd give you mine as well. But that's a different story.
I'll give you my phone too.
Same. Yeah. Now I carry 2 phones in my pocket. When I started, I didn't have any, but now I've got my personal and my work. So yeah, it's just it's crazy. And so how people interface with a state agency, and not only that, but when you think about Taylor, for instance, and the work that Taylor does, and how we collect that public feedback from the public is so different, and it's so driven both, we still do a lot of in-person stuff. We still have people writing us letters. We still have, but we also, we really do a lot of online stuff and use that information as a key area for making decisions in the work that we do.
Right. I mean, with that online input tool, we went from about 150 comments to over 2,500 in 1 year. And we looked in that 95% of the people that provided those comments are people that had never provided a comment in the past 10 years. So we reached out to a whole different subset of people that didn't even realize that this was an opportunity by using a new way to collect it.
So let's change directions and get off of a topic that's making us look old. I'm good with that. So now Bureau Director 2023, where are we going?
Yeah.
What are the goals and expectations going forward for wildlife?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. I've been so proud of the work that all of the staff are doing, to be honest with you. We worked 2019, we rolled out our new strategic plan, and a lot of the components of that strategic plan are really reaching out to the public and engaging the public in a whole variety of different ways, really working to build stronger partnerships, both with groups like the Federation as well as individuals that really care deeply about conservation. And we have to be honest too. The world of conservation is changing, and the individuals that are interested in conservation are changing. So, whether we like it or not, there is a changing demographic in society with fewer hunters as a whole out there enjoying the things that we just all grew up with, and just it's part of our being, right? And so we just got to think about and really try to capture. We got to keep working with all of our key partner groups, all the hunters and the trappers and the anglers. But there's also this whole other segment of the population that is so interested in wildlife and wildlife conservation, whether they're bird watching or whether they're doing photography or whether they're just going out for a hike. The reason many people go out for a hike, let's be honest, right? They're going out there to see nature. Many times it's wildlife. I always say everybody loves wildlife. So how do we bring those people into that whole conversation, continue to support our hunting and trapping and angling public, and bring those other folks in and talk about what are those opportunities to really enhance. And then it's, in addition to that, it's how do we bring more revenue to the table? And I know many times we may get scowled at as an agency for thinking about the revenue. But you know what? You think about the work that we do and you think about inflation, what that has been. That's a challenging area. You can't do more with the same amount of money when you're looking over, let's just say my 25-year, we'll say, career.
That's what makes you feel good. We'll go with it.
Yeah, that's my story and I'm sticking with it. But yeah, it's, you just got to think about how do we keep making conservation happen? And I would love to say it just happens on its own, but it doesn't, right? And it takes people. We have a lot of dedicated people, both inside the agency, outside the agency. And how do we bring those groups together to talk about whether the issue is waterfowl, whether the issue is prairie chickens or sharp-tailed grouse or pick a species, right? How do we continue to bring in the revenue to do the work and build those partnerships? And that's why we've really been looking a lot at, okay, how do we engage people in different ways? So we've started different things like the Adopt program, right? Great opportunity for whether you're a private individual or you're a conservation group to help come to the table, and you can adopt a portion of a wildlife area. You can provide money. You can provide, teamwork, right? Doing work shoulder to shoulder with your local biologist or technician.
Our friends groups,
all of that kind of stuff. And we see more and more of that every day. And I can't tell you how valuable that is, because not only is there work there, people coming forward to help do the work, but there also is that level of support that we as an agency, we don't do everything right, but the staff try their dangest to do the right things for conservation on a regular basis. But having people come to the table, share their perspectives and share their interests really can help us make sure that we are doing what the public is looking for.
And I know one of the other things that we're really focusing on, and Mark and I, we were at the Milwaukee Sports Show, was communicating with not just people that are interested in wildlife, but people that are interested in their ecological goods and services. So you may not care if you're not a hunter, you don't go out, but you sure don't want your house flooded. So you have to communicate with these people that have to realize how important wetlands are, or how important clean air is, or how important all of that. So having those discussions with another whole different subset of people that we don't talk to, but we can communicate, hey, if you don't want to have to pay X amount in flood insurance, or you don't want to have to do this is how we can do it while benefiting so much else.
Taylor, you're right on track, and you use the term ecosystem services, right? So the work that we do, whether it's restoring a wetland, yes, we do it predominantly for wildlife habitat, but you cannot forget the value in flood storage, water purification, groundwater recharge. All of those things come about as a result of the work that conservationists do. And conservation here in Wisconsin is largely driven by hunters, fishers, and trappers, right? They're bringing the revenue to the table through their license fees, as well as through Pittman-Robertson funds, which is a excise tax on guns and ammunition. And that continues to provide the revenue that we need to do the work.
This is something that Mark and I, we continually talk about. Is it's a controversial topic because, as a hunter, you're like, well, we're the ones paying for everything.
Yep.
But however, then if you ask other people to start putting things in, then you may not have quite as much say in how decisions get made. So that's always the topic, is how, like you said, how do we work with those groups to come out on the other end with a scenario that maybe not everyone's happy, but we're all okay with how things are going to shake out.
Yeah, that is so true. And you know what? I firmly believe there's enough room under that tent, right, for all of us.
Agreed.
There is so many opportunities for wildlife conservation to share the space, the public lands that we all value and appreciate. It's so important.
There's a galactic misconception in society when it comes to conservation, wildlife, and habitat. And we talked a little bit about it on an earlier episode. And GPR money in the state of Wisconsin in the wildlife budget, last I heard, is well under $100,000.
Yes.
And the vast majority of the GPR money that comes into the wildlife budget is dedicated towards one specific fund.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go places and give a talk or a seminar, everybody thinks that because they pay their property tax or their federal income tax, that they're paying for all of the good in conservation, when in reality, that is really not the case. Now, it's not that the hunters and the fishermen and the trappers are paying everything, but they pay a fair share more than most. And what's unique about waterfowl is when you buy a duck stamp, 98 cents of that money comes back towards conservation, habitat.
For the federal end.
For the federal.
The state end, it all goes back.
Right.
Yep.
And for the state duck stamp, we get everything.
Right.
And that's protected, right? So it's protected. No one, there might have been opportunities or I guess, attempts earlier to, subvert some of that money from that fund. And luckily, the hunting, fishing, trapping community has fought back and have said, look, this is how we fund what every single person wants to use. So funding has always been a key. And I think from 2023 going forward, it's even going to be more of a significant issue because of what we learned going through COVID. We learned a lot more people like to go to Lapham Peak. We learned a lot more people want to visit my wife in Horicon, right?
Devil's Lake State Park.
Devil's Lake State Park, right? So Wisconsin is unique in many characteristics, but we have 72 counties from Milwaukee to Ashland, right, to Vernon, to Walworth, to Washington. Pick a county.
Yeah.
And there's a destination for anybody to go visit and use public land.
Right.
But it needs to be maintained.
It does need to be maintained. And I like to say we have opportunities for everybody, right? If you want to go to a more developed site, if you want to go to a more primitive site, you want to get off the beaten path, or you want to go hiking with friends, we have all of those opportunities. But you're exactly right, Taylor. It does all take money. Now you're starting to get into my world. That's what I do these days.
So let's talk money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I need a raise.
Yeah. Don't we all? Right. Yeah. But you were hitting on it earlier. You know what? We are very fortunate here because we have a very strong constituency that supports the work that we do, and they support conservation. And so they're always ready to come to the table. And we've got a lot of designated pots of money, whether it's turkey stamp or pheasant stamp or waterfowl stamp, you name it. There's different pots of money, elk revenue that's we've got now, and we can use it. And, you can say it's waterfowl stamp and we focus it in on projects that are going to benefit waterfowl. But when you benefit waterfowl, you're benefiting all kinds of different species.
Frogs, insects.
Right. And it benefits everybody. It really benefits not only every species out there, but it benefits every member of the public. And many times people don't even know it. I think about that many times when I drive into work every day, and I grew up in a rural setting, right? Very, very connected to the land. As I drive in sometimes now and I look at, a lot of apartment buildings and I just think, well, where would that person hang a deer? What's their connection with wildlife? And the thing that I've learned over the years is that it doesn't necessarily matter your rural versus urban. Everybody cares about wildlife, right? Their wildlife might be different than mine.
A bird feeder.
Exactly. It's a bird feeder. It's the rabbits. They may be scolding the rabbits or the turkeys. That's a separate story, right? And that has been an issue too that has gotten bigger and bigger over time is, animal damage, right? People, I think I can remember when we, I laugh about this now, but I can remember when we hauled geese to Horicon Marsh and we released them there because we didn't have geese, at Mead Well.
There's people out there that thinking, what were we thinking?
I know. They're probably scolding you
Yeah.
now. Well, you go back even to the days of when they first started the Mackenzie Center.
Yeah.
What did they do at Mackenzie? They were raising raccoons.
Foxes.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that. Dave's going good right now. We're making progress.
But nonetheless, my point is, you're right. Wildlife populations have changed, and now we're getting to the point where in some of those species, we do have to really focus in on how do we manage them within acceptable levels for the general public.
And I think the important thing with that is having the partners that help us with, whether it's the Wildlife Federation, it's your Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, Conservation Congress, National Wild Turkey Federation, anybody that's out there that to help us manage those, we need to have a voice of the constituent base because not everyone's going to call the DNR, let's be honest, and be happy calling the DNR. So really relying on organizations like the Federation is huge.
So Taylor and I, we were talking the other day, and it was conservation, communication, and collaboration. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's really why we started the podcast, right? It is a way to blend a state agency with stakeholder groups, as we go through and interview all sorts of different people. The idea is to help promote the great work that the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is working on or have done already.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's what the future is going to bring. And all these stakeholder groups and just individuals who are willing to become involved is what's going to carry the future of conservation.
Yeah, it's a peek behind the curtain, really, of, if we can't tell our story, then nobody really knows what's going on. So, yeah, the podcast has been, whether I've had people contacting me, friends saying, hey, I had no idea that's the type of work that's been going on. And that's what we look forward to for all of our future episodes is how can we tell that story, whether we're talking about cool research that's been going on or what's the next up and coming thing that's going to be happening with the wildlife program. This is our venue to try to get this out.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity.
So before we conclude, Eric, what do you want to tell the people who use all of the great assets that Wisconsin has?
Yeah. Really my key message to the general public at large is really come to the table. There's lots of room under that tent. We have lots of great staff that are always ready and willing to engage and talk about issues, talk about the species of concern. Reach out to those staff, whether you're, coming to the Horicon Marsh Education and Visitor Center and going to the Explorium, or you're going up to Crex Meadows up in the northwest part of the state. There's a lot of great opportunities to engage with wildlife. And like I said earlier, those opportunities are however you want to make them. Right. So come to the table, come to our meetings, come to the discussions that we have, engage in the surveys that we may have out there. I would strongly encourage folks, whether you want to be a long-term hunter or not, or whether you're just concerned about your food and where your food comes, think about, learn to hunt or hunting opportunities, fishing opportunities. There's lots of great things that the agency has available.
It's endless.
It is. It really is endless. And take part in those, get to know what's going on around you, get engaged and be a part of that conservation effort.
And this weekend, it's supposed to rain and snow, depending on where you're at.
I know.
And Eric brought up Horicon and the Explorium.
Mm-hmm.
What a great opportunity to bring your wife or your family, your girlfriend. It doesn't matter, but for a relatively insignificant amount, you can spend, 45 minutes to an hour and learn about one of the true gems that Wisconsin has right now.
It is a family-oriented opportunity to bring, I don't care, bring your wife, bring your husband, bring your whoever, bring your friends to. If it's raining outside, we have opportunities. And Horicon's one, we have Mead, we have Crex.
Did you say Horicon?
You did say that. Yeah.
Well, you could be, battling the conditions and take a youth out this weekend to go turkey hunting.
For the youth turkey hunt.
It'll be a little bit tough depending on if you're north.
I think Chase is going to do that, right? The producer, the man behind everything. I think Chase is looking for that opportunity.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget that. Actually, thinking back to that when I took my son out, I think it was the first youth hunt that he had, and it was like 17 inches of snow. Fortunately, We're not going to have that in the southern
No.
state. They may still have that in northern part of the state.
Yeah, I think in our neck of the woods,
Bobby
they're talking
Crone, this
4
is
to 8
meant for
inches,
you right now
so-
at 25 inches in Eagle River. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, look, Eric, thanks so much for taking time out of your evening, coming to the Federation's annual event, sitting down on the podcast and telling the folks, the great folks of Wisconsin who use the outdoors, how great it truly is and how great it truly is to serve them in your capacity.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for having me.
Great. So, hey, Chase Baker and Grit, thanks for everything that you do to make this show possible. We can't thank you enough. You are truly a magnificent individual and a gem for conservation in the state of Wisconsin. And Taylor's Taylor. Nothing needs to be said. That's why he's our special guest, right? Thanks everybody for viewing and hope to hear from you soon. Be back. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.